Hello everyone, I'm Ryan Wagner, M&A leader with Black Diamond Mergers and Acquisitions here in Kansas City. You may have seen some of our previous videos discussing, what buyers can do to prepare for an exit. Expectations, what you need to prepare yourself for. Today, I wanted to kind of talk about the other side of things. And that is, what does a buyer look for when evaluating a business? Why would a buyer pay more for a certain business? Why would a buyer pay less for a certain business? I spent a good amount of my career before joining Black Diamond on the buy side, evaluating different types of transactions, evaluating risk. And the things I'm going to be talking about today are not only important when, conducting the day-to-day operations of your business, making day-to-day business decisions, but they're also important in understanding what could your business potentially be worth when you go to an exit. So at its core, the value of a business comes down to the risk associated with that business for a buyer. And I'll get into, some of what creates more risk for a buyer versus characteristics of a business that are less risky. Other factors come into play, like the business industry, the industry that a business is in, a buyer's knowledge of that space, etc. But in general, there is an inverse correlation between the perceived risk for a buyer and valuation. The riskier an investment, the riskier a transaction seems for a buyer, the less they would be willing to pay, and vice versa. So what are examples of things that a buyer could see as more risky? First and foremost is cash flow volatility. If you're experiencing significant fluctuations year over year in your cash flow, that would obviously be seen as something that's a bit more risky versus a business that's able to achieve stable cash flow generation year in and year out. That one's a pretty simple one, but there's a step beyond that, which is this concept of recurring versus reoccurring revenue. And so what is that difference? Well, recurring revenue is something that you can count on year over year, whether that be from a long-term relationship, a long-term contractual relationship where somebody has agreed to buy from you or contract for your services for a longer period of time. That is seen by buyers as very stable, very low risk, something they can count on when they think about taking over the business. Versus reoccurring revenue, in that instance, you may be achieving steady year over year revenue figures, but you're having to replace the revenue that you got in a previous year with all new sources of revenue the next year. Meaning, you sell a lot of one-time use products. Your service is a one-time service, and your revenue mix is all new clients, all new customers, versus recurring revenue, which I talked about previously, where the same customers, the same clients are buying from you from a long period of time, and that revenue is more locked in. Reoccurring revenue is more risky because you're having to go and replace, the revenue that you did in the previous year. That's another form where a buyer would put more risk on reoccurring revenue versus recurring revenue. Another source of risk for a potential buyer is the management structure. Does the business live or die with the current owners or a key employee? Would the business be able to function if the current owner or key employee was no longer involved? The human element of a business can also add to this risk. A buyer coming in where, there's a solid management structure in place where employees are able to do their jobs with limited oversight from owners or key employees is much less risky because they don't have to then go out and figure out the solution, what they're going to do with the management or the key employees when they take over ownership. If that structure is already in place, that's a much less risky proposition for a buyer versus going out and having to figure out what to do, after they take over. Another one is the value of your business dependent on future growth? The old adage speaks true here, which is a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. If you have a growing business, often it may seem like a slam dunk for current owners that growth is going to occur. Of course it's going to occur. Well, a buyer's not going to see it that way. And while they may give you credit for that future growth, it's often going to be at a significant discount to the value they would place on historical earnings or current earnings. And their consideration for growth may not even come in the form of an upfront payment. This is where we see structures like like bonus payouts based on future performance, earnouts that get paid once the business achieves certain milestones. Those sorts of things can all be structures a buyer uses to limit their risk when it comes to underwriting significant growth prospects with the business they're looking to acquire. These are just a few simplistic examples of how buyers evaluate transactions and how buyers evaluate risk. Like I said, there are numerous other factors that go into the value a buyer is willing to place on a business. But in general, the more risk associated with your business, the less a buyer will be willing to pay for it up front. All of these things are important to consider when thinking about an exit. How will my business be perceived? Are my expectations reasonable based on how a buyer would view my business? More often than not, a business owner will have a higher view of the value of their business versus a buyer. And so it's important to understand how a buyer will look at things so that you can either set your expectations or figure out if there are risks associated with your business, how can we address those? So if you have any questions about your business, or want to know how a buyer may look at your company, may value your company, feel free to reach out to us. We would be happy to give you an independent look on your business, the risk factors, how the market may perceive your business. We have these conversations all the time with both buyers and sellers, so feel free to give us a shout. I hope everyone has a great day, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks.